The biggest reaction of the night, without a doubt, came when Donald Trump discussed the wall. What does that tell members of Congress? We heard a story yesterday about how they might try to force him to do some mini amnesty of illegal immigrants in order to get funding for the wall. And, oh boy, that didn't make a lot of my listeners happy. Joining us now, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Understanding Trump. Can Trump and the GOP get back on track? Newt, great to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Well, it's good to talk to you, and it's a very interesting time. And, I think part of this is that Trump clearly believes that there's a style of pushing and bullying and shoving that works, and that as opposed to the more traditional Washington style of trying to reach out and find ways to work with people. And I think that he's sort of serving notice that he's not bothered by a problem. Bobby Knight, when he was the head coach at Indiana, had a very similar kind of style where he would publicly berate his players and push his players, and and he thought that got more out of them, that they rose to the occasion. And you have sort of Trump's relation to Congress is very much like Bobby Knight.
Well, I love Bobby Knight. First of all, he's one of my favorite coaches of all time, and he was reviled in the American media, especially by a lot of the sports journalists who are tending now to be more liberal. But Newt, when I heard the reaction to the president's speech in Nevada yesterday, it was stunning, because the coverage now is he's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. So he gives this campaign-style rally in Phoenix, and it was classic Trump. It was in your face. It was patriotic. It was calling out the media. I mean, that's just pretty classic Trump. Then he goes to speak to the veterans, and it's a much more sober and forward-looking, let's all get unified speech, and yet he's criticized for that as being erratic, Newt. He's erratic.
Well, I as an experiment, watched the end of the speech in Phoenix on CNN, and watched the opening of Don Lemon's diatribe, which was virtually screaming into the TV set. He clearly had written, at least it looked to me like he was reading from a teleprompter, and it was one unending hateful word after another. You sort of understood if you took the Trump's 20-minute assault on the media and then you watched Don Lemon, you understood you're actually watching a real war. I mean,
Newt, we have the soundbite. Let's just play it for people who were lucky enough to miss CNN post-Phoenix speech. Let's listen.
What we have witnessed was a total eclipse of the facts. Someone who came out on stage and lied directly to the American people. He's unhinged. It's embarrassing, and I don't mean for us, the media, because he went after us, but for the country. This is who we elected president of the United States. A man who is so petty that he has to go after people who he deems to be his enemy, like an imaginary friend of a 6-year-old. His speech was without thought. It was without reason. It was devoid of facts. It was devoid of wisdom. There was no gravitas.
Gravitas. Newt.
We used to tell the story for candidates of the candidate who was going door to door, and he knocks on a door, and this huge guy with a big belly shows up in a T-shirt holding a beer can. And he stares at him and he says, you are here? You are despicable. I can't stand you. I look forward to voting against you. I can't imagine how bad you are. As the guy leaves, his staff says to him, so how did it go? He said, I think he's undecided. So my reaction to Lemon is, Lemon was virtually deranged.
Yeah, he seemed like there was something wrong with him.
What he said, and by the way, he then triggered a panel that, having set the standard for derangement, matched him.
But the great thing about
this is,
I was just saying, the great thing about
has almost nothing. Go ahead.
The great thing about the panel is that it completely reflected what the president had just said about CNN. A bunch of people nobody knows, just editorializing without any semblance of balance, and a bunch of nods from the anchor. I mean, so he would say, well, he's unhinged. And then April Ryan would say, he's unhinged. And then another one whose name Rick Wilson, who was the guy who founded the Never Trump movement. He's saying it's a bunch of crap. And he's just saying kind of profane words, one after the other. And they wonder why nobody is watching them. It's just not interesting conversation. You can criticize Trump for going on too long, or maybe reopen the can of worms
you
with
can raise lots
Charlottesville.
of questions about the speech.
Right.
And I think that the Monday night speech on Afghanistan was a dramatically better speech, dramatically more pro-presidential. I think yesterday was fine, a good policy, good speech, reasonably well received. But what I'm struck with on my newsletter tomorrow at Gingrich Productions, which brief commercial is available for free, is going to take one of the big surprises of the week, which is the President Macron of France, who is the darling of the left and this wonderful, young, dynamic, revolutionary, he's now dropped from 64% approval to 36%. He has a lower approval rating than Donald Trump. And yet, do you think anybody in the elite media is going to look at it and say, gee, I wonder what's happening here? The Prime Minister of Great Britain has a lower approval rating than Donald Trump. The Prime Minister of Japan is about the same as Trump. But in this country, and I noticed this in some articles this morning, the left is now saying, oh my gosh, Trump is trapped at like 40%. Well, it may be that Trump's base is very solid. They don't seem to pay any attention to what the news media says. And the question is, do you think over the next 3 years he can grow an extra 10 percentage points and win re-election? And the odds have to be at least even money, if not better, that he will, in fact, in the end, get reelected.
Well, and I think, Newt, that when we have CNN and MSNBC both showcasing these polls by the same polling companies who were just horrifically wrong for a year and a half during the 2016 campaign, it doesn't really. Why is anyone surprised? I mean, so they ask a question: do you think Donald Trump has exhibited the stability of thought and character that is typical of most presidents? Oh, 80% of people say no. Oh, see, the people are just frightened of the way the questions are worded. And I know that's the old complaint about wording of questions, but they are trying to elicit a certain response to forward a media narrative that Donald Trump is mentally unstable and thus must be removed from office. That's really where we are.
And of course, you had Obama's director of national intelligence yesterday, or the day before, feeding into that particular line of thought. What they're trying to do on the left, and they became unhinged, I think, on election night, between 8 in the evening when they thought Hillary was going to win, and 11 in the evening when they realized that Trump won. I think the left has never recovered from the trauma of that experience, and I think as a result, they're building a model in their heads where they somehow get Trump out of office by some magic device, starting with this notion that he's not fit to be president, he's not balanced. One of the reasons I wrote Understanding Trump is I watched everybody who was wrong about the election be wrong about the transition, then be wrong about the inaugural, then be wrong about the first 3 or 4 months. And I thought, these are people who refuse to learn anything. And they're the people we're supposed to pay attention to.
The Quinnipiac poll, this was one question that I thought was interesting. I just pulled it up. I hadn't seen it until just this moment, Newt. Question is, would you say that Donald Trump is doing a better job as president than you expected, a worse job, or about what you expected? Now, in February 22nd, that number was 52%, saying that about as expected. That's the kind of job he's doing. Now the number is 55%. At one point, it went up to 60%. That's kind of an interesting poll question because people know this is complicated. He doesn't have a majority in the Congress to do the more populist conservative stuff that he wants to do. That's clear. He doesn't have willing partners in some parts of Congress. That's clear. But I think most people, like 33%, say he's doing worse than they expected and 10% better. I think overall, that's like 65% of the country who said it's going about as well as what I thought it would go. I don't think that's bad at all.
Sure, look, I think we forget in Washington that the country lives lives that involve baseball and soccer, golf, fishing, looking at preseason football. There are, they go shopping, they go on vacation, and occasionally they look up and they say, well, how's it going overall? They don't pay any attention to the gossip. They don't pay any attention to the daily stuff in the news media. And what's the overall picture? The economy keeps growing. The president continues to be dramatically pro-American in a way we've not seen in our lifetime.
Never.
They are literally beginning to renegotiate in serious ways, looking at the trade deals that have been so bad for the country. He is appointing conservatives to the court, just as he promised. They have radically cut the regulatory process. I mean, radically. And this is one of the things the news media can't cover because they're so busy gossiping. But so the average person looks up and goes, not bad, not brilliant, but not bad. And that the news media just doesn't know how to handle that.
And of course, Newt, the the killer question is like the right track, wrong track. That's an important question. But a killer question for any elected official, and especially the president, is the state of the economy. And the last poll question from August 17th was rate the economy. 62% said it was excellent or good. That's why you never hear CNN, maybe never, but rarely hear CNN dwell on the state of the American economy, except to put some expert on who said, well, there's a crash coming.
Well, it's very funny. I was with a very smart younger Democrat strategist the other evening, and we were talking about our two parties, and I said, what's amazing is, to whatever degree you think that the Republicans are cratering because they're not getting certain things done, right, your party's cratering faster. And we're sort of having a race here to see who can be more unacceptable, and you're winning it. And it's literally true. I mean, with Rana's leadership at the RNC, they are outraising the Democrats dramatically. The Democrats are literally sliding into debt because they can't raise any money.
Well, they got to get tax reform, though. They got to get tax reform. Mitch McConnell's got to get it together. I know he's the sage of the Senate, but I'm tired. I think Mitch McConnell's going to slide into 2018. They're not going to do tax reform. This is what I predict. They will not do tax reform. They're going to slide into 2018. And they're going to try to skate through because there are too many people in the Senate who actually don't want to give Trump this legislative victory. I know that sounds cynical and really negative, but I don't see it. I don't see the resolve to do tax reform.
Well, I'm very worried, and I'm with you, because I think they're trying to do something far too complicated. I think if they don't get it passed and signed by Thanksgiving,
not going to happen.
Very hard for me to see how it affects the economy next year. And if the economy next year does start to slide, it's very possible you're going to end up with Speaker Pelosi, and then Speaker Pelosi would be a total nightmare for the third and fourth years of the Trump first term. And I don't think that the White House understands this. I don't think that the House and Senate understand it, and they are still sleepwalking. In my judgment, they are still sleepwalking towards a bill that is too complicated, is too difficult to communicate, will take too long to pass, and people will not understand why they should be for it.
Well, I think the American people and all the listeners, people who go to Gingrich Productions, all your fans, Newt, people have to get engaged with their congressmen and senators. Deliver a bill to the president that he can sign that will get the job done. And I want this process to be transparent. I want it to be out in the open. I want to see what the bill looks like. I don't want it. I don't want it to be Christmas Eve. You know how they always rush it through like Christmas Eve? They're going to. And then it's always something disastrous. No. This has got to be done right, and it's going to be transparent and clear to the American people. Newt Gingrich, it's always great to have you on. Thank you so much for joining us. Give my love to Callista. We'll take a break, close out this hour. Don't go away.